Now we're going to go through the example of a test first iteration or a pre-test loop if you're going to search Google for it and look for help. Unfortunately in the computer science ATAR syllabus they call it test first, which you'll find nowhere else on the internet. In computer science terms, pre-test is the more common name for this type of loop. So as the name implies, we do test it first. We pre-test something before we go into the loop. And on that basis, we need something to test. So in this case, we've got I and it equals 1. So we initialize the variable and place 1 in that variable. We can assume that this is an integer. And then the while statement will test that. So we'll say while I is less than or equal to 5, we're going to do something. Now in this case, we output I. In comparison to the fixed loop, we need to increment I specifically within the loop. If I or change the value of what we're testing. Now, in this case, we're moving through a number sequence. In another situation, we might be testing a character or a string or something like that might change. Anyway, so in this case, we're going to be changing I by incrementing it by 1. And this is I equals I plus 1. That increments it by 1. I plus plus is also applicable. And then we get to the end while. So we should have a result of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we'll go to Visual Studio and we'll carry on actually from where we left off with a fixed loop, just to show something. Because we're going to say while I less than or equal to 5, close parentheses, open curly brace, close curly brace. Well, you can see there's an error. The name I does not exist in the current context. So in this case, what we're looking at is we've got an I here. We've declared an integer called I. We're testing that I to see whether it's less than 5. We're incrementing that I to move it up. We're outputting I. So clearly we have a variable called I, except we don't. The scope of I, the scope of the variable I is only available within this block of code here. It's local to this block of code. It's unavailable outside of this code. So here, I doesn't exist. There is no I. So you have to actually declare that before you get into the loop and make sure that it's within the same scope as this code here. So we'll get rid of this code and we'll create an integer called I and we'll make that equal 1. And you can see the error goes away because we've got this integer called I and we've initialized I and we've placed 1 into it. So at this point we're going to console.writeLine and then we output I. Now if we ran this now, all we're going to get is 1. So we'll do that, Control F5, and you can see that this is just running 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. You know, if you scroll up this list, it's just forever outputting 1. So why is that? So while I is less than or equal to 5, it's going to write that out. Well, I doesn't change. We're in this loop here. We've initialized this I and it equals 1 and it keeps on doing it because I doesn't change. We have to actually change it. So I equals I plus 1. Close that, terminate that line. And we run that loop, Control F5. We go. So it moves through this loop. So initialize I we equal to 1. While I is less than or equal to 5, we're going to do this. So console write line I. So it prints out I. Then I equals I plus 1. Moves around the loop. Does it still equal to, does it evaluate to less than or equal to 5? Well, yes, it's 2, so it does. Goes around again, increments by 1. This I is now worth 3. Is it less than or equal to 5? Well, it's less than 5, so it moves around again. 4, then it gets to 5. Is it less than or equal to 5? Well, it's equal to 5, so this is still true, evaluates to true. And then it prints out, and then I becomes 6. Round we go again. Is I less than or equal to 5? Well, no, this now equates to false, so it immediately drops out of the loop. Now, the question now is to you, what is I? So let's find out. Console.writeLine, I, run that loop. I, at the end of that loop, at the end of that while loop, is equal to 6. That's important to note there. You need to be aware of what happens there. Because if you need to use that I outside that loop, which you can because I exists scope-wise outside of that loop, I is available to this main method here throughout this main method because we declare it here, we initialize it here, and it's still available here, but it's still available afterwards. But now it's worth 6. So if we're going to use that variable, we need to be aware of what that's worth.